What is up, you guys? We are here for our weekly energy oracle forecast. Just taking a look at the week ahead to see what kind of spiritual weather we will be having. Ooh, opposition, showdown. We are face to face with our adversary. And so we are face to face with what is working against us. Are we working against our own subconscious inner conflicting desires? Is there some shadow aspect of us that is manifesting in some sort of outer conditions that reflect that adversarial energy back to us? Whatever that is, watch out for the energy of opposition this week. There's a reason it's showing up. So if you can take a step back and pause and try to observe it without reacting or engaging in a way and from affect consciousness, right? You want to proactively handle whatever opposition it is because it's related to important lessons. There's something within the opposition that it's trying to offer you an insight, or it's trying to show you something. It's an opportunity to find something out, right? Like if you are in one of those like old 1940s movies and you're like one of those reporters and some event has broken and it's revealed some thread, and when you follow the thread you've like uncovered some huge secret, some big story, right? Like that's the subconscious. And when we're seeing this opposition come up this week, that's like that first little inkling where you're like, I have a hunch. I think there's a story here, right? So don't you guys love those movies that are like the detective movies? And then there's always like, they're always teaming up with this reporter who's always following her hunch, and then they follow the story. And that's how the reporter and the detective always end up meeting up, because she started off, writing a story that seemed unrelated. And then she realized there was a bigger story attached to the other story. And then they cross paths because he's investigating a crime, and they figure out, oh, okay, right. We need to team up because whatever my story is about, it's linked into your investigation, right? So that's spiritually how life is playing out for us at any given time. So if we can kind of, instead of, it's so easy to get caught up in the rat race of human existence and just get so bogged down and frustrated sometimes with the circumstances of life. But when we're in that frustrated place, and this is exactly what the weekly energy from the Zohar is kind of pointing out, that we're not seeing that we're not seeing it from a divine perspective. We don't see the whole picture. We don't see how all the parts are fitting together and playing together. So if you have opposition, trust that this is that there is some purpose in it. And it's not that you should just accept the opposition, but it's not wrong that it's in your movie. You just have to figure out how you're supposed to be playing out the scene, right? So maybe we can get a little bit more insight on that. This feels like it wants to come out. Oh my God, observe. Sometimes the cards, it's like, no, I said that. And then it's like, no, I said that. No, I said it first. And then you reinforced it. You underscored it. But do you see this? It's like, observe the opposition. Observe the opposition, because you're going to be able to unpack some reoccurring pattern that is preventing you from moving forward or expanding. Interesting. Oh my God. And it's like, look at these colors too. I think that's worth noting, that these cards are so similar in their color in the palette here. There's yellow, there's like that orange, like monarch orange here, like monarch butterflies. That same shade is used in these flowers here. They look like peonies. Interesting. And then the sunflowers, they always follow the sun. They're always facing the sun. The other day, when I was trying to pray, actually it was not the other day, it felt like the other day because this was such a long night at work, but on the way to work this morning, I was like trying to pray that I wouldn't be like provoked or instigated by many examples of the working in a restaurant is the best place for spiritual growth because you have opportunities for the opponent to show up everywhere, all over the place. And so I was going to work and I was like, God, help me have the strength to overcome my tikkun, to not fall into the bait when the opponent, dangles the carrot. Help me to have, instead of complaining, because, that was the point. It's like if someone's complaining, they're leaking their energy, but they're focused on the lack and they're focused under the assumption that like something's gone wrong, that God's not in total control of what's going on. Right? So it's like, okay, help me have tunnel vision on the light, right? I kept thinking about that play on words. It's like, follow the light at the end of the tunnel, follow the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was like, I've got to put blinders on to all of the other things that provoke my ego or my defense mechanisms or my survival instincts. I have to put blinders on and focus on the light. Keep tunnel vision for the light, right? You've heard like people, when they're managing people say like, please don't get tunnel vision when you're focused on this part of the job. Like you still need to attend to other things too, right? When you get tunnel vision in a negative way, it means that you're distracted all on one thing, but you're missing out on important details that need to be taken care of. Well, there's also a positive way you could have tunnel vision as like, honing in on your attention and your mental discipline, right? And so I was thinking tunnel vision for the light. And so it's like you just look for the light in any situation. Even in challenges, they're there for a reason to serve you in some way. One of the stories that I thought was the most powerful in the Shavuot overnight study, the all-night study, was one of the teachers was telling a story that that the Rav and his wife Karen had told at the center many times, and it was a story that his mom had heard from their teachers, the Rav and Karen, and they had told him and his brother, who are also teachers now, while they were growing up. There was this rabbi who was training under another, like a student who was training under a respected rabbi, a Kabbalist, and the student kept bugging the master, the teacher, about teaching him how to speak the language of the animals and the birds. And he was like, it's not really going to help you to know how to speak their language, so I don't really want to teach it to you. So let's just focus on, these other areas that we've been delving into. And so the student is like obsessed. He's like, I got to know the language of the animals. I've got to know the language of the birds. I want to be able to have that. Like, it just seems like something that I have to know. And he wouldn't leave him alone. And he's like, fine, I'm going to teach you this because you won't leave me alone about it, but it's not going to help you. And the guy couldn't understand how it wouldn't help him, how it wouldn't be a tool in his tool belt to help him if he knew how to use that language, right? So he teaches the guy how to speak the language of the animals and the birds. And so one day this guy's walking through the village and he sees these two squirrels talking. And the squirrels are like, hey, see that guy over there? And the other squirrel's like, yeah. And he goes, his house is about to get robbed right now. Like, there are thieves breaking in and they're about to take all of his valuables. And the guy was like, oh my God, they're talking about me. And so he runs home and he intervenes and he stops the robbery. And he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said this wouldn't help me. It's already helped me. He was like, I've almost lost everything. Like, if I hadn't have heard the two squirrels talking about it, I wouldn't have known to go back to my house and I would have lost all my stuff. So the story goes on for a while, and it picks up at another time when he was out and about and he heard these two birds talking, and he was like listening in to the birds' conversation, and the bird was like, hey, you see that dude over there? And the bird was like, yeah. And he was like, his house is about to burn down. And so the guy was like, oh my God, 2 for 2. This is crazy. And so he ran back to his house, and sure enough, like a fire was starting. And so he was able to put out the fire. And he was like, this is great. Like, I can't believe that I almost wasn't able to like learn how to understand animals because they prevented all these things from happening. It's so wild. And so then he's out and about again, and he notices these 2 little snails, and they catch his attention, and he's listening to the snails, and they're like, see that guy up there? And they're like, and the other one's like, yeah. And he's like, the other snail's like, he's gonna die tomorrow. And the Kabbalist was like, oh my God, like it was so in such panic. So he like goes to his teacher, and he's like, listen to this that I just heard. He was like, I don't know what to do. Like, how can I stop this? How can I prevent this? Like, what should I do? And his teacher was like, well, I mean, do you remember when I told you that it wasn't going to help you to learn the language of the animals? And he was like, yeah. And he goes, well, when your house was going to get robbed, that was pain that was going to cleanse, like, you know, on the cosmic scale, it was actually going to cleanse some of your negativity in a major way. That it would have eliminated some of the judgment coming to your way. And then again, it happened when your house was going to burn down. You had another opportunity to work off that like kind of tikkun debt, like the karmic debt is how other, you know, belief structures would kind of describe it. But tikkun is like, you know, things getting, you know, cleansed and purged and worked out, you know, in accounting in different ways. And so the fire was going to be a way that you could have cleansed some negativity to avoid that judgment. But you intervened in both of those situations. So neither of those situations were able to help you balance your spiritual deficit. And that shortened the length of your life. And so had you allowed those events to happen, you would have been able to cancel that judgment. And so that was such an interesting story because it's so true. I mean, when we talk about these scales all the time, and we talk about how when we transform our darkness, when we overcome difficulty, that tips that scale, that transmutes that darkness forever into light. There are different ways that happens. Sometimes it's through the chaotic events of our life. Sometimes it's through physical pain or illness. Sometimes it's from an embarrassment or a loss, like a failure. Sometimes it's from the amount of effort that we give or the sacrifices that we make voluntarily or the charity that we give or like maybe the work that we do for someone that's difficult, like a favor or help or something or support. So there's different ways that we are working off our spiritual debt at any given time. And we don't really see the bigger picture. And so recently we have been discussing at times, like, you know, trying not to be looking at things with judgment. Like discernment is one thing, but judgment is another. And when we look at things with judgment, we're usually judging whether it's good or bad, right? But when we're discerning, we're kind of usually discerning on whether something is right or wrong or like harmful or not. Like it's like, you know, right and wrong is different than good or bad, right? Because if you look at the example in the story, it has nothing to do with right or wrong, but at a glance, like when you look at, oh no, I'm about to get, my house is about to get robbed, that seems like, and when we look at that situation and judge it from a human perspective, we say, oh, that's bad. I need to go prevent that preventing it is good. Oh no, the situation in the story about the almost house fire, it's like he prevented that because that would have been bad, right? And the fact that he was able to make it in time and save the place, that was good. But you never know because those things, although they might have seemed good in the moment, later that they were actually there to serve a higher purpose that was actually kind of a hidden positive that he couldn't see, right? So when we see these things of opposition, if we can try to observe it from a way of non-judgment, right? Not taking it personally, like, why is this always happening to me? But more like getting curious, like, okay, why is this happening to me? Or why is this happening for me rather? Like, what's the significance about the situation? Is it that you're learning how to trust your instinct about people or situations, and you keep ignoring your intuition and then it keeps turning out to be right? Or are you constantly falling into the same like self-sabotaging tendencies? And then you're seeing them come up and you're like, oh, okay. Instead of thinking like getting all self-loathing about it, just be thankful that you finally are observing it, that you can see it, that you can recognize it. That's when we dismantle these patterns. When we can see them and we can see them play out, it's like it takes the trigger away. It takes the subconscious loop away. It like wakes us up from the illusion, and we don't fall into that reflexive response mode, or reflexive reactive mode rather. We can be proactively responsive instead. Interesting. Oh my gosh. Let's see what's next. Okay, I feel like that's the one. The other one that I want. Oh, here we go. Empathy. All right. So there are positives and negatives to being an empath, because what happens is it can be a superpower or it can be a danger until you learn how to wield this gift. And unfortunately, the thing is, like with something like being a manifester, usually you have to try to like strengthen that gift, and that's a gift that you try to develop. But with people who are empathic, it's like something you didn't ask for. And it's probably really strong, and you have to almost learn how to turn the volume down and be able to wield it with like discipline and self-mastery, or else it really does a lot of damage. It can burn you out big time. So I'm a major empath. I can feel things from a mile away. I can feel things coming. I can feel things on the global scale, the local scale, the personal scale. I can feel like things around me, and I can't quite put my finger on it sometimes. I can feel how other people are feeling. Like it's just like, it's not even like a sixth sense. It's like one of my five senses. But I did not know what what an empath was until I was already into my like adult awakened spiritual journey, like, you know, studying like what people would call like woo-woo things and all that. I learned that an empath is someone who can feel other people's emotions, and your like psychic like spidey senses have to do with like being able to read the feelings and the emotions and like the internal nature, the non-physical nature of what's happening. You can really read the energy. You can feel the information. It's coming through your feelings. Almost like when people describe like geniuses are like doing math in their head and they're seeing all these colors and smelling the stuff, and it's like their wires are getting crossed, but it makes sense to them. It's kind of like that. You're feeling information and you're processing it, and like, you know what's going on, but you can't, like, until you learn to trust yourself, there's no way to prove it, right? So before I knew I was an empath, I was always like, I don't know, I always thought of myself as a fairly level-headed person and fairly grounded, but I don't know, sometimes I would have these like deep emotional like mood swings, and like, I don't know, there was a period of time I was living in this house over in another neighborhood like close to this one, and I was living close to, like, very close in proximity to the house next door, and it was a woman next door who was a widow. And she had been recently widowed, and she had 3 very troubled teens, and she was, she homeschooled them and stuff. And she was a super sweet woman, but just in the most difficult battle and struggle that you could imagine. Living, like, struggling, fighting poverty, like trying to raise 3 teenage kids, having just lost their husband. And so she was in deep grief, and I was in such a depression when I lived at that house. And it's not that it wasn't all of my, like, a lot of it was my own stuff to process, because I was in the early phases of like a deep spiritual awakening. myself, but there were times when I could not name why I was suddenly so grief stricken. And then one day I was listening to like what would have been a podcast, but at the time it was called like a telesummit, and it was like a phone call interview that people were having that they were recording and then they would broadcast it. So I was listening to a telesummit and somebody started describing what an empath was. And they were talking about how you can feel other people's feelings around you, but if you don't realize they're other people's feelings, then you can easily mistake them as your own, and it can be very confusing because you don't know why you feel that way. And so you spend a lot of time and a lot of energy feeling confused about why you have all these feelings that you can't like connect to anything. And so that right there, that knowledge in and of itself started to help me to realize, okay, if next time I'm feeling this way, I would start to check in and I would be like, okay, is this mine? Like, am I actually grieving something that's mine right now? Or am I just feeling stuff in the air that I can, not hang on to, right? And that helped immensely. I think just even having that psychic awareness put up some level of like psychic fencing around me at that point. So there's just becoming self-aware, and that saves your energy. But then also, empathic people tend to attract narcissists, because what a narcissist is an addict whose drug is other people's energy and focus and attention and emotion. And so they love an empathic person because that's like a continuous source of their drug. It's like, oh, someone who will empathize with me and see the best in me and reflect back to me what I want to see about myself. And I can play on their empathy and compassion, so I'll get them to do things for me and I'll get them to people please. And so it becomes a very codependent, draining situations. And it's not fair because the greedy taker, the energy vampire, gets fat, and living high on the hog. And us empaths end up feeling withered and drained of our life force. And many times we end up having autoimmune disorders because of it and having all kinds of illnesses that we have no idea. Everybody around me that is a caring, like very intuitive psychic person that's always overgiving to everyone else, and most of these people are female, they have the same health problems. And they're all stem from autoimmune issues that are coming directly from the fact that they are being sucked dry by people around them. So the battle then becomes protecting the gift of your empathy for goodness sake, so that you have a kind and pure heart, but also for the gift and the empowerment that can give you to help others and be of service to others, right? Now, there are some narcissists who have no empathy at all, and they're like sociopathic. But then there are other narcissists who do have enough empathy to where they can use that as a way to control others and use it as a manipulative tactic as well. So it's like the key then it's like to protect your innocence, to protect your purity. And by doing that, you have to learn how to be confident in yourself in saying no. You have to be comfortable letting other people be uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with disappointing people and letting people be all huffy. And, I just listened to my coworker at work. He's also living with like a fucking narcissist who does the most awful things. Is the person that like will just not pay bills because he knows that the roommate will just have to do it. He'll be forced to do it, right? He'll just let the water get cut off, and like the other roommate is just like stuck in the lease with him. So the bad roommate, or the roommate that is guilty of bad behavior, spits those zins down the kitchen sink, like someone who has absolutely no house training. Like, you're gonna spit solids that don't dissolve down the pipes, down the plumbing. Like, what are you, like a 7-year-old? Like, adults should know not to do that. And so the plumbing's been all effed up in their kitchen. And then come to find out, the one guy for, I don't know, God knows how long, has just been spitting these things, trash, down the sink. And so the one roommate just calls him out on it. He's like, hey, you've been spitting all your things down the sink and it's like clogged. Can you not do that? And then they came to work and he said that the roommate that has bad behavior huffed and puffed and pouted and threw a big fit and like gave him the cold shoulder and silent treatment. Gaslighting him into thinking that he had done something wrong by asking an adult not to put large trash down the sink and like basically destroy the house. Like, can you not destroy the house? Right? So narcissists weaponize clinical language and, spiritual instruction in ways that take advantage of people who are already empathic. And so then we have to be very cunning, okay? And so that way we know that when we are using our empathy, that it is by our own choice and free will and sovereignty, and that we aren't being coerced, right? There's no coercion in spirituality. If you've been coerced into something, you didn't really give it. And if you're coercing something from someone, it's not genuine, right? So guarding your energy is not selfish, but also being an avoidant who wants to take for the self and never be generous or think of anyone else, that is selfish, right? But if you're an empath, then you probably need to add a little bit more selfishness back into the mix to balance yourself out, because you might not know when it's appropriate or okay to say no, and you might feel resentful for things that you're giving that you're not really fully aligned with. And even if you're not resentful, it's like you might be draining your energy or, allowing people to suck your energy dry who have no intention of filling your tank back up. Over the weekend, oh my gosh, my table was a date. And it was this girl and this guy. And I was over at the piece of furniture that we have all of our silverware and side plates and stuff in, and I was putting together a tray to bring them their dinner silverware because they were finishing up appetizers, and so I could hear them behind me. Or no, I was gonna set them up for appetizers. This was early. It was early in the dinner. It was right off the bat, and I could hear them behind me, and he was saying that he only sees her as friend material, but he needs to have more women friends. So he just wanted to be honest, but he was hoping that that was cool and they could be friends. And you could tell that she was like, whoa, is he really saying this? Because she kind of laughed it off. She was kind of nervous, nervous laughter. She was like, wow, that's hilarious. You're just hey, yeah, I just only see you as friend material. And by the way, she was actually a very attractive, high value, good gal. This is no throwaway here. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, do you see me as a potential best friend? Is that what you're saying? And he's like, oh no. So basically he just totally sucked in every way possible. And he just wanted to sit there and trauma dump on her and have her try to, I guess, therapize him into being not some douche from the manosphere. Oh, I know I suck now and the tides have turned against us. So now I guess I'm going to try to have women friends. But really, he's not bringing anything except for he's just telling her about himself and his childhood and his parent problems, the whole dinner. And I'm like, girl, escape. I would have left the situation by now. When he said, I see you as friend material, I would have been like, okay, cool. Well, you have a good rest of your night. But she sat there through the dinner after being insulted twice, Do you see me as a potential best friend? Oh, no, I don't like you that much. I don't respect you. I just want you to be here and, like, I don't know, let me trauma dump on you and, like, use you and then, you know, whatever. So I just couldn't believe it. And then he was also the kind of person who kept reaching out and wanting to touch me table side, and I kept leaning back and like stepping back so he couldn't reach me, because he would have had to reach out and touch me, and then that would have been even weirder. So I'm like trying to like evasively avoid being touched by him, and you know what he did? He forced me into a high five. Like, what am I going to do as a server? Like, somebody goes for a high five and I don't give them a high five. Like, he was like determined to lay hands on me. And then another thing that pissed me off about him, and this was like, oh my God, because I started to judge myself for judging him. And then he said this. I had just talked to this other couple at this table, the couple that he's about to say something about. And the couple, we're talking about, like, they asked me if I like it in Nashville. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a super majority Republican city, so that really sucks. But otherwise, like, it's nice nature. It used to be a lot cheaper. Like, we're talking about, like, the pros and cons. And they're from a nearby city. They're from Jackson. So they're pretty much local. So I'm going back and I'm like removing dishes, giving them clean dishes. And I hear him talking about that table. And he tells his date that he thinks they're from Nigeria. He's like, that guy's totally Nigerian. He's totally from Ghana. He's got that look. She's like, how can you tell something like that? And he was like, oh, you know what? I passed by him earlier. He's just got this look. He like goes on to this bullshit. He's just fucking running his mouth like a fucking asshole. And I wanted to be like, actually, they're from Jackson, Tennessee, but thanks for just exposing what a generalizing prejudiced person you are. You're just making these just ludicrous assumptions about people. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, this guy has sucked in every way he possibly can. But I'm like, that is exactly what I'm talking about. A freaking narcissist sitting there, having this woman get herself ready to go to all that trouble to make her plans on Saturday night for him to basically break up with her, but then put her through a horrible, unpleasant dinner. That's life you can't get back, y'all. And I'm like thinking the whole time, girl, you are being too empathic. You need to cut off the energy vampire, because you know what the thing about vampires is? You have to invite them into your house. There was a point in my life where I had taken in this mutual friend of a big group of friends of mine, and he was this sort of gutter punk who had sort of fallen into this series of unfortunate events that left him unhoused suddenly. And so he was a very charming character, but he was an energy vampire. And it's so funny because people who pass through my life, they always leave me with this talisman item. And he left me with a couple of different ones. He was such an energy vampire. And I thought it was weird because the 3 items that I have that I thought were the most crazy, I don't have all of them now, but I have this one book from the Scholastic Book Fair, and there's from what he must have bought when he was a kid, and there's an illustration of a vampire in like this really cool etching, like antique etching look. And I'm like, oh my God, and it looks exactly like his face. And I thought, that is too spot on. The second is that I have this mirror that he left at my house, and it's like gold leaf like that, but it's smaller. But it used to be in my background in my earlier videos. But it's like a vampire can't see their own reflection. And then the other thing that he had that he left at my house was this guitar case that was in the shape of a coffin. How on brand are those 3 items for an energy vampire to leave those in my life? And so that was one of the many examples of narcissists who have latched onto me because I did not have the ability to identify who they were, and I didn't know about my own gifts. And so the empathy, most intuitive gifts feel like gifts and curses, right? Because it comes with some frustrations. And sometimes you have foresight that you can't do anything about, and sometimes you try to warn people around you and they don't listen. It's Cassandra, the Greek tragic goddess, demigoddess, right? So being an empath, to have empathy for others is an absolute superpower. And it is an absolute necessity for healing in the world. But we as empaths, we have to protect our power and protect our strength. And we have to make ourselves savvy and cunning. And we have to strengthen that backbone. We have to strengthen that spine and our ability to say no. Because we are just so exposed. Like, people who want to prey on us, they can feel the energy wafting off of us like a radiator. They love it. They're drawn to it. Other people may not pick up on it, right? Just like how we can feel how some people suck the air out of the room and other people don't notice. The people looking for you, they can feel your energy too. So, and that might be the opposition. The opposition coming to you all the time is, look at these hands. I'm grasping. I'm wanting. I want to take. I want to take. I want to take. Right? And so we have to proactively give consciously, but not because we're giving because we need to feel accepted, or we're scared of what happens if we don't, or we need to feel validated, or we're afraid that we'll be, cast out of society if we say no. Like, that is a codependent pattern, and we need to break free of that so we're liberated. Okay, and one last card. Passion. Let's see, this one was with it. And friendship. Oh my gosh. So it's like this empathy makes for such passionate friendships, especially when you have a group of empathic people that are together and they're cooperative and they all see eye to eye and get along and they have harmony. It can actually generate so much goodness and so much passion and get so much creativity and inner, support going for one another, right? And so it's just that we have to be observant of our energy, of our thoughts, of the energy around us, of the, boundaries that we set and keep, and also be aware of people who want to cross those boundaries. Being able to handle those influences when they show up as well, right? And it starts with us. We have to honor our own boundaries as well, too. So if you have like a certain kind of narcissist that's always showing up to you, or a certain brand of person that's always showing up and crossing you in a certain way, ask yourself if there's any way that you're doing that same behavior to your own self. Because I realized I was doing it too. I was like, why do I get these flaky relationships where these guys like promise all these things and they never follow through? I know a lot of women are laughing out there like, that old chestnut. But you know what I mean? Like, just like, why, there are men out there that follow through on their promises. So like, why am I getting these kind, And then it occurred to me that I wasn't keeping my own promises to myself. I wasn't showing up for my own self in a consistent, reliable, dependable way that I would want a man to. And so there are men who are very reliable, consistent, and trustworthy, but I wasn't getting any of those experiences. And I was like, what part of me is putting this out there? I don't think I am projecting like doormat, insecure. Like, I don't understand what's attracting this. And then God finally like revealed it to me one day. It was like, oh, all those times that you don't keep promises to yourself, or that you don't, that you allow people in that aren't trustworthy. Every time you do those things in ways that you don't realize to your own self, it's like you're setting the stage for other people to do that too, because you're putting that energetic signature around yourself. So very interesting, very interesting. So let's just go over them one more time real quick. So we have opposition coming out first, followed by observe. Observe, observe. Try not to get in the drama and in the soap opera. Like, don't get emotionally provoked, but watch, right? And then has how has this affected you, your levels of empathy, right? Are you feeling drained? Are you learning how to protect your empathy so that you don't feel like you're developing like subconscious defense mechanisms because you feel you feel so threatened, right? You feel exposed when you're empathic. If you have let people in that violate that take advantage. So we have to learn how to manage that energy. And then once we do, though, it opens us up for so much more, like, you know, full-hearted, wholehearted relationships with others, because then we have other people of like mind and who are very good-natured, who are trustworthy, who are worth sharing and caring about and pouring your energy to, and because they're going to pour their energy back into you. But look, these are equal. Those are equal friends, right? And they're working together. They're not opposing. They're not in opposition. So I think good things are coming. I think we're able to see what's been the pollutant in the energy, and we're getting to the bottom of it. We're breaking these patterns, and what's going to be on the other side of that is deeper friendships and more authentic and more aligned friendships, and the friendships that we have are going to feel better for it, you know, because there's going to be a healthier flow of that love and that energy, and the giving and the receiving. All right, you all, that is all for tonight. Oh my gosh, that was a long one. I had a bunch of stories, but I hope those examples are helpful in identifying some things for you. All right, well, tomorrow we'll be back for our weekly anchor message, and that'll be like our spiritual assignments for the week, and we'll go more into that then. All right. No news, nothing specific, no landmarks, just on the other side of that, the 49 days of the counting of the Omer, and finally the overnight study of Shavuot. That was great. And now I'm kind of burnt to a crisp. So looking forward to refreshing my spiritual and creative energy this week. Actually, I feel pretty charged, but I think I need to recharge my physical energy is what it is. All right, you all. Ciao.